Hello, welcome. Today, I'm going to go over the genealogy of anti-Asian violence, particularly in the United States. Hashtag Stop Asian Hate. My name is Professor Jenny Banh, and I work at Fresno State as Associate Professor in Asian American Studies and Anthropology. My big suggestion before you do this is to look up right now the hashtag Atlanta syllabus about anti-Asian violence for the University of Wisconsin. Their syllabus is quite wonderful, and I highly recommend that you look at their Asian American Studies perspective on anti-Asian violence in 2021 and download those readings that are open to everyone in the public. Those are great and wonderful readings that I encourage everyone to read. Now, in memory of the violence that just occurred, 8 people were just murdered in March 16, 2021. And I want to read out their names and give them respect. Dayu Thung, 44, Hung Yoon Grant, 51, Sun Cha Kim, 69, Paul Michaels, 54, Soon Park, 74, Xiaojia Tan, 49, Delana Yuan, 33, and Yang Yu, 63. My argument is the 6 out of 8 people that murdered that were Asian women would be alive today had they been non-Asian women. The officer or the police representative who said that the shooter was having a bad day, that is actually an indicator of the invisibilization of Asian American violence that's actually been occurring since Asians have come to this country. Now, usually when I talk about this in my classrooms, I begin our discussions always with Orientalism. Orientalism is this concept, and a great book I recommend is by Edward Said that talks about how Orientalism is basically a construction. It's not real, but it basically says that the Orient is an exotic foreign land, that people are backward and religious. And actually, it's complete construction. And the only reason why Orientalism existed was basically a cover to take over, imperialize, and colonize Asia. And that's been happening for hundreds of years. Now, Orientalism, of course, has been redone, another way of saying Orientalism is yellow peril, but another way, the opposite of yellow peril, which is the same as the yellow peril, is this concept called the model minority. Asians are great. Asians are wonderful. Asians are smart. They're rich, right? Now, it started with this guy, William Peterson. He wrote this story called Success Story, Japanese American Style, right? And he really talked about how Japanese Americans, after their internment, they did so well, right? The sociologist. Well, actually, Peterson, not the case, because after the internment, the Japanese Americans were completely devastated. So he put this article out, and it really started this whole model minority. Asians are a model minority, right? In reality, this was actually created, other people used Asians as an anti-Black sword, as an anti-Southeast Asian American sword, right? An anti-people color sword to kind of like divide and conquer. So again, a model minority, same thing as yellow peril, same thing as Orientalism, not created by Asians at all. Historical anti-Asian acts that you should know about. Well, in 1875, there was a Chinese Exclusion Act that excluded all Chinese from immigrating here. 1924, which is National Origins Act, which included all Asians from immigrating here. And I want you to keep in mind, I want you to really remember the 1875 Page Act, which excluded Chinese women from immigrating here based on the fact that they were said to be immoral, right? Insinuation that they were prostitutes, right? But what's the reality? The reality was you did not want these Chinese men to have families, and you didn't want them to reproduce. That's the reality. And in 1942, there was Executive Order 9066, which rounded up all the Japanese living in America. Some were born here, and they were actually put in internment camps. And again, Roosevelt's own Munson report, look it up, declared that Japanese Americans were not in any way actually trying to take over the United States or doing treacherous acts. Now, I want you to look at the 1904 World's Fair, St. Louis. Filipinos were actually part of the human zoo. That is correct. Asians were part of the zoo, right? Here you see this Igorot kind of faux kind of exhibit where they made the people there eat dog every day to show and the visitors, right, of the human zoo of Asians, okay? So a lot of people don't remember that. Again, depiction, exotic, right? Erotic, diseased, right? All these images of Orientalism. I'm going to go back to the 1875 Page Act. Now, there restricts the amount of Chinese women entering the United States under the guise that they didn't want an influx of Chinese sex workers. Reality, they wanted to keep the population down. They didn't want to have these Chinese men to have families. Thus, they're by themselves, had horrid lives. And this also created the racialization of Asian men as asexual, right? Because they didn't have families. A lot of them were doing menial labor, such as, or particularly laundry, right? And so again, this racialization still occurs again. And what I always tell my students is the past is not the past. The past is here. It's like a cycle, right? The past is not the past, right? So I want you to keep in mind that 1875 Page Act, right? This image that Asian women are immoral, right? Now there's so many hidden history, and I can actually create another video. Probably a couple hours long on the violence, the racial violence that's happened towards Asians, but I'll just pick two. In 1871, there was a Chinese massacre in Los Angeles where the local people just went in and robbed and just shot everyone in the face and lynched them in Los Angeles, right? And burned down Chinatown. And when people and the Chinese wanted to testify against the people who did it, they're not allowed because there's a law where Chinese people cannot testify against a white male, right? And again, that's something that's not talked about. And what was the reason for the massacre? Guess what? They wanted to put the railroad train there and they wanted to put it through that land. So what do? They just murdered those people. Okay. And also in 1907 in Bellingham, there were riots against the South Indians and they were pushed into Canada and other places, just horrendous racial violence. And unfortunately, there's been so many. I don't want to go into all that. I'll make a separate video if you request it. Recent hate crimes. In 2013, a white male shot and killed Sikhs in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. No one talks about the mass murder that occurred there, right? Multiple people were murdered, 6 people, and this is just one of multiple murders and against the Sikh community that again gets no publicity. And of course, the 2021, we have all this racial violence, murders that we just talked about, and I'm going to go over that later. So again, I really want to clarify the model minority is not real. Over 12% of the Asian American population lives below the federal poverty line. And again, Hmong and Cambodian women earn 61 to 57 cents, respectively, for every $1 white non-Hispanic males make. And again, sadly, this doesn't even talk about the other things like domestic workers, farmers, restaurant workers, and sex workers, and all the different workers that make up the Asian American or Asians living in American community. And one thing that people don't talk about is the 1.7 million undocumented community members that make up the wider Asian America. Look no further than the University of California, one of the most prestigious college systems in the globe, if not the best. And if you look at the DACA students, DACA is actually for undocumented, right? It gives them some sort of freedom to work and live in the United States without being prosecuted. Well, 50% of the DACA students at University of California are Asian. Okay, so it kind of like warps you and makes you think, what is an Asian American, right? There's multiple Asian Americas and not everyone is a quote model minority. Okay, it's more not real than real. Of course, I want to talk about Islamophobia. So much Islamophobia has happened, particularly after 9/11. And also Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders are very much overrepresented in the prison system, right? And again, a lot of people don't talk about that group as well, and that has to be clarified. So if you go on the San Francisco website, I encourage you to do that. It's by Russell Zhang and Cindy Choi. Have a great website that talks about the anti-Asian sentiment that's happened and the reporting site. They've had over 10,000 reports of shunning, racial violence, racist graffiti, and of course, even murder, right? So again, the physical assault is 12%. Right? The third largest category. And then unfortunately, a lot of people don't talk about it, that it's really directed at women and children and elderly. And again, stop Asian hate and be an ally. Okay. The pandemic started in China, but it brought a lot of hate to Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders all over the globe, United States, but also the globe. Be an upstander. That's what I recommend. If you see violence, record it and stop it. Call someone. Also, consider taking the Asian American Studies class. 70, 60 to 70% of the global Earth is actually of Asian descent, and 6% of the population of America is Asian American. And so I really want to encourage you guys to take an Asian American Studies class and to learn more about the ever-relenting violence. So this violence and murder that's happening in 2021 didn't just start. It's always been here since Asian Americans have been here. Also, consider majoring in Asian American Asian Studies or minoring in Asian American Studies. These are great for, particularly if you want to be a teacher, a social worker, a nurse, a police officer, anywhere where you with the community to learn more about this underrepresented and underserved community. So thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and have a wonderful day.